I was thinking about Mars going into retrograde, and so I decided I would look up the past 24 hours in the news and look up suicide and probably keep a daily watch on it while Mars is on retrograde. And of course, most of them are about the guy that did the live suicide on, is it Facebook? And different talks about it. But then I go down, and these two really caught my eye. Because Governor Sisolak, Nevada, he was the sheriff that was on duty during the October 1 event in Las Vegas. And he got the governorship. That was his reward for cooperating with the plan. So, and then right below it, first Governor Sisolak signs proclamation supporting suicide prevention in Nevada. And then right below it, HRC recognizes World Suicide Prevention Day, posted 8 hours ago, right when Mars went retrograde, by a human rights campaign. You know, the funny thing about that is human rights. It's a freaking spell, because a human right is a right, not a right. This is a direction. This is not a privilege. It is a right. It's beyond a privilege. You have a right. And then there's the magic right. To right is the magic right. And then you have the Mr. Right. It's all a spell. Right and right. Right and right. You right the rights. Here you're supposed to right the wrongs. Alright, let me erase this. Oops. And get back to the Suicide Prevention Awareness Month. HRC, which we know who that is, right? Is shining a light on LGBTQ mental health and connecting people with the resources needed to get the help. So here again is this victim mentality thing. Here again is the rainbow flag. We know these symbols here. I can't say the word. And red on top, purple on bottom. So this is not a prevention ad. This is there to invoke it. This is a ritual to invoke suicide. I imagine what they're doing in Nevada is as well. Let's scroll a little more. Veteran suicide, which was what was aired, is really huge. National Suicide Prevention Month, starts the day that Mars goes retrograde in Pisces. Everybody's going to be talking about it now. You're going to start seeing more and more as time progresses. Suicide among veterinarians is a problem. I had a friend, her name was Tara. She's literally, to this day, the most precious person I've ever met in my life. I met her when she was like 19. She had just started college. And she was so naive to the world. She had been such a sheltered child. And she raced horses as a kid. And she thought she wanted to grow up to be a veteran. That's a veterinarian. That's what she wanted to do. And I know a lot of people that have said in their life, I want to grow up to be a veterinarian. I love animals. And this was back in, this was back in the late 80s. And I just straight up told her, you don't want to be a veterinarian. I said they have the highest suicide rate of any profession. She didn't understand. I said, well, think about it. I said, you go into the business because you love animals and you want to save them. But that's not what happens. Most veterinarians are pretty much under their license to get their licenses in a lot of counties, cities, and states. They have to agree to work with the local shelters, and it is their job to put the animals down. So every vet volunteers a lot of his time, and most of his time is spent euthanizing animals, not saving them. And that's why they have the highest suicide rate of any profession. Hands down. You get people that are empaths. They have this strong empathic connection with animals and have to stand there day after day as they die. Or you have to make them die? Think about that. The kind of people that are attracted to it and what it actually turns out to be. Inmate suicides. NSSF Project Child Safe Support Suicide Prevention Month. Oh, I don't even want to see their logo. All these big foundations and organizations, these trusts, adults contemplating suicide during pandemic. September is Suicide Prevention Month. Recognize the warnings. Yeah, I recognize the warnings. It's Mars retrograde in water on the Mutable Cross. The only thing worse is Mars retrograde in Cancer, because then he's debilitated, and it's a cardinal sign. But this is like number 2, having Mars retrograde here. And what's really pushing that Mars is because you have Saturn, Jupiter, and Pluto aspecting it in fire of Sagittarius. Let's go take a look at one more time. I know we just did this, but let's do it again. I always know I'm on the right track when I turn on Stellarium and Fomalhaut is there. I should have done the go out and meet the bridegroom again in August, and I did not. So much has been going on. I've been so busy. So we have this Saturn, Jupiter, Pluto aspecting this. Now Mars is bad enough on the Mutable Cross in water by himself. It's already bipolar. Feminine axis of the Mutable Cross. He's already bipolar. But to go retrograde is depression. So when you add that bipolar with the retrograde depression, it way increases the numbers for suicides. You get so many that's just going to go ahead off that other end. And here in a few hours, we're going to have the moon move into Gemini. Let's find out. That's really going to pump it up, because that will also be on the Mutable Cross. All this is occurring on the Mutable Cross. Let's move. Okay, that's day. So on, check that out. Of course it's on that day. Why wouldn't it be? Huge day, huge trigger day. That puts the sun in Virgo as well with Mercury. So on the 11th, you're going to have Mercury, the sun, the moon, Mars, Saturn, Jupiter, and Pluto, all on the Mutable Cross. All of them. Saturn, I think Jupiter's coming out of retrograde on that day. So it'll be stationary, which is just going to kick up. It's just going to make it more intensified. And this is Jupiter's house of religion over here. So you've got a lot of energy that's feeding into this. The sun, the moon, Mercury, everybody but Venus, Uranus, and Neptune. That's it. And Neptune is Venus is aspecting the water here. So everybody but Uranus in cardinal fire and Neptune in Aquarius. Let's verify our Neptune. Yeah, Neptune in Aquarius. So Uranus and Neptune are the only ones that are not aspecting this Mars retrograde in mutable water on this day. That day right there. Which marks the masculine axis of the fixed cross. Interesting, huh? The stars can tell us what's going on. These are the stars we need to be watching and listening to, not the one on the lying Satan box. That box lies. We see what the box is in the iPet Goat. iPet Goat 2 shows us. You see the image of Satan in the TV screen, and he's just shouting at the child, who appears to be depressed and almost suicidal, right? Y'all want to go take a look at that? To me, this is the same character here that we see in the very beginning. See how the child looks depressed and suicidal? He's got on the yellow. The yellow is fire, right? That's the Molech they've got. That's the masculine axis of the cardinal cross that's ruling the mutable cross. They're out to get her, right? Let's watch what he does. He's just hollowed out the minds of the youth. But this is the same character that in the beginning, when you see the puppet strings and the puppet master, this is the puppet master. Television, they don't care if you listen to it or not. The spell's going to work on a subconscious level because it's all about symbology. His right eye is blacked out. I remember coming through the body in the right eye. Why, they do the left eye blackout, right? The ritual, the Black Eyed Pea ritual, he's got on the water symbol, Jupiter. Jupiter, Mars, and the moon rule water. You're going to have Jupiter, you're going to have the moon and Mars in water and Jupiter in fire. You have Jupiter and Mars with the sun and the moon. They rule water and fire. Period. Nobody else. Jupiter, Mars, sun and moon. So the moon and the sun are like the power centers. But what's behind it is the Mars and Jupiter. And you've got Jupiter in fire and Mars in water. But they really work together, right? Jupiter is Europe and Mars is Asia. At least this go round. It used to be the other way around. Mars used to be worshipped in Europe and Jupiter used to be worshipped in Asia. We find that flip when the 10 tribes were carried over the Caucasus Mountains. So they took their religion with them. So here's the bad guy in all of his splendor, his pointy ears, his left ear piercing, water symbolism, his teeth, and suicide in the stock market goes. And that's when everything loses control. In the Bible, I'm going to say it was King David. I'm pretty sure it was. He counted the people. This is a census year. 2020 is a census year. And he was warned, God warned him, do not count the people. If you count the people, there will be a penalty to pay, a penalty of life. And he wanted his people to be without number. No number. You don't count them. So David did it anyway. And then God came back to him and told him, well, now I'm going to give you a choice. But so many people have to die because of what you did. And so how do you want them to die? Do you want them to die by war, or do you want them to die by disease, plague, coronavirus? So now David chose plague. He didn't want to take his people to war. So he chose plague, and the plague came. And David was beside himself. He liked to afflict his shit and committed suicide himself, because he suddenly realized that the plague was taking the women and the children. And the war would have only taken the men. And he could have been selective in the men. He could have taken the elderly and the weak. But the plague was non-discriminate. And he didn't have a choice as to fixing the odds in the favor of the people. And he felt like he had made a grave error, that at least in a war, people would have a fighting chance, so to speak. But in here, we're kind of shown not really a plague. We're shown a lot of death in this. That's just all there is to it. Let me go see if I can find it. This story is actually told in a couple of places in the Bible. I chose 1 Chronicles 21 because it starts out with, and Satan stood up against Israel and provoked David to number Israel. And David said to Joab and to the rulers of the people, go, number Israel from Beersheba even unto Dan, and bring the number of them to me, that I may know it. And Joab answered, the Lord make his people 100 times so many more as they be. But my lord the king, are they not all my lord's servants? Why then doth my lord require this thing? Why will he be cause of a trespass to Israel? Nevertheless, the king's word prevailed against Joab. He was provoked. Wherefore Joab departed and went throughout all Israel and came to Jerusalem. Joab gave the sum of the number of the people unto David, and all they of Israel were 1,000,000 and 100,000 men that drew the sword. And Judah was 460,010 men that drew the sword. But Levi and Benjamin counted he not among them, for the king's word was abominable to Joab, and God was displeased with this thing. Therefore he smote Israel. And David said unto God, I have sinned greatly, because I have done this thing. Now I beseech thee, do away with the iniquity of thy servant, for I have done very foolishly. We do it every 10 years. And every 20 years, it coincides with the Saturn-Jupiter conjunction. And the Lord spake unto Gad, David's seer, his prophet, saying, go and tell David, saying, thus saith the Lord, I offer thee 3 things. Choose thee one of them, that I may do it unto thee. So Gad came to David and said unto him, thus saith the Lord, choose thee either 3 years' famine, 3 months to be destroyed by thy foes, war, while the sword of thy enemies overtake thee, or else 3 days the sword of the Lord, even pestilence, which is the plague, in the land, and the angel of the Lord destroying throughout all the coast of Israel. Now therefore advise thyself what word I shall bring again to him that sent me. And David said unto Gad, I am in a great strait. Let me fall now into the hand of the Lord, for very great are his mercies, but let me not fall into the hand of man. So the Lord sent pestilence upon Israel. And the other story, it actually tells you David chose that. And there fell of Israel 70,000 men. And God sent an angel unto Jerusalem to destroy it. And as he was destroying, the Lord beheld, and he repented him of the evil, and said unto the angel that destroyed, It is enough, stay now thine hand. And the angel of the Lord stood by the threshing floor of Ornan the Jebusite. And David lifted up his eyes, and saw the angel of the Lord stand between the earth and heaven. Where? Having drawn sword in his hand, stretched out over Jerusalem. And David and the elders of Israel, who were clothed in sackcloth, fell upon their faces. And David said unto God, Is it not I that commanded the people to be numbered? Even I it is that have sinned and done evil indeed. But as for these sheep, what have they done? Let thine hand, I pray thee, O Lord my God, be on me and on my father's house, but not on thy people, that they should be plagued. Then the angel of the Lord commanded Gad to say to David, and David should go up and set up an altar unto the Lord in the threshing floor of Ornan the Jebusite. And David went up at the saying of Gad, which he spake in the name of the Lord. And Ornan turned back, and saw the angel and his 4 sons, and hid themselves. Now Ornan was threshing wheat. Threshing wheat is when you get the chaff off of it. You beat it, and then you throw it up in the air, and the chaff flies away. In translation, for us, it's purification, and we do have, right now, we have Uranus in purification, which is our minds. And as David came to Ornan, Ornan looked and saw David, and went out of the threshing floor, and bowed himself to David with his face to the ground. Then David said unto Ornan, Grant me the place of this threshing floor, that I may build an altar therein to the Lord. Thou shalt grant it me for the full price, and the plague may be stayed from the people. And Ornan said unto David, Take it to thee, and let my lord the king do that which is good in his eyes. Lo, I will give thee the oxen also for burnt offerings, oxen, and the threshing instruments for wood, and the wheat for the meat offering. I will give it all. And King David said unto Ornan, Nay, but I will verily buy it for the full price, for I will not take that which is thine for the Lord, nor offer burnt offerings without cost. So David gave to Ornan the place 600 shekels of gold by weight. And David built there an altar unto the Lord, and offered burnt offerings and peace offerings, and called upon the Lord. And he answered him from heaven by fire upon the altar of the burnt offering. He set it on fire himself. And the Lord God commanded the angel, and he put in his sword again into the sheath thereof. At that time, when David saw that the Lord had answered him in the threshing floor of Ornan the Jebusite, then he sacrificed there. For the tabernacle of the Lord, which Moses made in the wilderness, and the altar of the burnt offerings were at the season in the high place at Gibeon. They're doing all the festivals. But David could not go before it to inquire of God, for he was afraid because of the sword of the angel of the Lord. And there are other translations to this story told in other books of the Bible, probably in Kings, right? 1st and 2nd Chronicles parallel 1st and 2nd Kings. 1st and 2nd Chronicles is like the Judah-Benjamin version, and 1st and 2nd Kings are the 10-tribe versions of the same stories, because the nation divided. So we have a nation that's being divided. we have one group screaming. They're really upset because Trump's bringing soldiers home. No war. He would rather, I guess he chose plague, right? He chose the plague. But it's Satan that provokes. Or I'm just going to translate it out. It's Jupiter that provokes. Jupiter provokes. Now for the warning signs. The warning sign here in this situation would be, first, that the individual is emotionally unstable, which is mutable water. It's bipolar. It's emotionally unstable. They can go from really high highs to really low lows. Literally, it's just a matter of hours. As long as somebody is calm and stable, you're fine. But if they're really sad, that's a given to watch them. But I'm going to warn you that if they're really happy, if they're overly exuberant, they are at most danger, because the fall will be great when the depression hits them. And everything's fixing to turn around. When Saturn turns around, the boot is coming down. The hammer's coming down. All these people that's been getting away with all of this stuff, it's going to stop. We're going to see security on the streets like we've not seen it. Myself personally, I don't think we're going to have an election. I think they're going to try to throw us into that war, just like in iPet Goat 2. Because our plague was phony baloney. It was phony baloney. And you're going to have, on 9/11, you're going to have that moon right where it was on the 9/11 ritual. And then it moves into Gemini and starts doing this. By what time? What time of the day will it move? The day will begin with the moon over Orion and the sun pillar. Ritual time. The 10th, huge rituals, the 9th and the 10th, while the moon is here. But when that moon aspects that Mars, well, not a day. I want to do it by the hour. I want to see exactly when it comes in. Oops, missed it. At 2:44 a.m. it will move into Gemini and it begins. So there's going to be no telling what. I don't put anything past the Satan box and the shit that they'll spew at you. They're going to tell whatever they want to tell. Our money's not real. Our wars are not real. Our governments are not real. None of it's real. None of it. It's all a construct. It's all a game. It's all a play. It's all a put on. It's a faux pas. But this is real. This is the only real thing. That tells the truth, if you know how to read it. You got to know the language. And I feel very fortunate in my life that I acquired this knowledge. And it wasn't easy. It was years and years and years of work. But it just clicked for me one day. It's like I said, I didn't choose astrology. It chose me. It chose me. But I have my moon and my Venus here in Aquarius in my natal chart. And I should have a love of astrology and alchemy. But I didn't. I didn't till it clicked for me. I didn't have a love for it. But I do now. Later in my life, coming upon my second Saturn return, I'm finally fulfilling my purpose, my love, why I came here to stand in the gap and to learn this alchemy and astrology, and to share it with as many people as I possibly can. Alright, that's my update on Mars and National World Suicide Prevention Day, or whatever it is. And you know, if they're there, if they tell you they're there to help you, that means they're there to hurt you. This is not, these rituals are not about suicide prevention. They're there to invoke it. And as long as that rainbow flag has red on top, which is emotions, Mars, emotions are off the charts, bipolar, and now retrograde. What would they would say, God help us all? I have to question which God. Our Father in heaven, help us all. Because everybody is going to be affected by this. We're going to start seeing more and more of that stuff, like what happened on Facebook. That was just the beginning. That was the opening ceremony to this grand ritual, because it's all about slaughter, and it's all about to get her. And you got to pull yourself together to get her. All right, people. You know what to do. Be the kindness. Be the love. Stand in the gap. Keep an eye on your loved ones, especially those who've had issues in the past, because they're going to hide it. You're not going to see it. They're going to try to suppress it. But always keep an eye on somebody that is really serious about suicide. You'll never know it's coming. I attempted suicide as a tween, about 11. And I didn't leave a note. I didn't tell anybody. There was no warning signs. I was serious. I just wanted out. That's all. Just a normal, regular day. Nothing different than any other day. It was just the day I decided, well, I've had enough. I'm tired of being here. I'm tired of being abused. I'm tired of being unloved. I'm tired of it all. And I made a decision. And like I said, there was no note. I gave no warning sign. And you won't get one either, unless you're paying really close attention. So if you have family members that are unstable, if you have family members that are born with Mars in Pisces, or Mars in water, or Mars on the mutable cross, or Mars retrograde, today, this whole month, while Mars is in retrograde for a while, November, right? Keep an eye on the people you love in the weeks to come. And stand in the gap for them. Because nobody else is going to do it if you don't do it. So be the love. Stand in the gap. And God help us all or heaven help us all, that this is a 2020 census year. And that's either going to be the plague, the war, or the famine. And famine generally brings on plague and war. We're probably going to get all three. I wouldn't put it past them. When you crash the stock market, which is what they showed us, then that's the go signal for the planes to start flying. And then we move into the war phase of it. I love y'all a bunch. Be the best you can be. Hang in there. Learn to take up your cross and follow the Lamb, the Star of Bethlehem, the real one, wherever it goes.